I'm Roger for Moonshine Designs Nursery and one of our greenhouses, and what we're going to talk about today is starting lavender from seed. A lot of people have trouble with this. It's not like you're growing radishes or beans or something. It's very simple. Lavender can be considered to be one of the more difficult seeds to germinate, and a lot depends on the variety and the source and how that seed has been treated. There's something called Apex Prime, which is lavender seed that has been primed, I should say pre-primed, to germinate rapidly. Otherwise, lavender by nature has a low germination rate, and you're not, unless it's apex primed, you're not going to get a 90+% germination. One of the high demand varieties that we grow is called Vera. A lot of commercial growers use it, and we sell thousands of plugs of those every year. And they are grown from seed, and seed looks like this. There's some in a bag. You've never seen lavender seed. It's fairly small, but it's not tiny. This is a 1-ounce package. This happened to come from looks like Zella Jakey Farms and Garden.com. Maybe I pronounced that wrong, but at any rate, it says on here the germination is 84%, which is really, really good for Vera lavender seed. If you just sow this in your seed starting medium and put it on the bench and wait for it to come up, it won't. It needs to be pre-treated, and what it needs is what they call a cold, damp stratification. We sow our seeds into trays of either 512 cell, which is like this here, or 288, which here's a 288 cell tray. To do that, we don't use a big expensive commercial seeder. We use this thing. I've had this for a couple of years now. It's called a So Perfect Seeder. Inexpensive. On our homepage and our website, towards the bottom, there's a link to the guy that invented these, and he sells them, and buy one from him, he'll ship it to you. We're not getting paid for promoting his product, and I bought these. I mean, they weren't free. But what I did to be able to accommodate the 288 cell and 512 cell flats, they come pre-drilled. I'll try to hold this up there so you can see it. For different size seeds, and there's 3 sets of paddles with 2 sides to it. If you look at the other side, along the bottom there, you'll see that's for a larger seed. Along the top is the one that I drilled and modified to work with a 288 cell flat. Just a note on how we sow these. And I've got the whole size set so it'll drop 2 or 3 seeds per cell. And the reason for that is we don't want empties, especially since we have to stratify these. We don't need a whole bunch of empty cells. It also makes it frustrating when you go to transplant. You got empty cells and you're counting on so many cells you need for either 72 count or 50 count or 128 count plug flats. So that being said, we use a commercial propagation mix, the seed starting mix. If you're doing this at home, you can use a product like Jiffy Mix. It's available at the big box stores and garden centers. And for cold stratification, if you're doing this at home, you need to take a small amount of that mix and get it damp, not soaking wet, so you got water running out of it, but uniformly damp. Put that into a baggie, Glad bag or Ziploc. Ziploc probably be good. And pour your seeds into it, into that damp mixture, and work it in your hands. Get everything around in there real good. Lay it flat. Throw it in the back of your refrigerator at home, not the freezer, but the refrigerator, for at least 4 weeks. At the end of that 4-week period, you could bring them out and sow them into a larger flat of, well, Jiffy Mix, for example, and give it a covering with a very light coat of Jiffy Mix or very fine vermiculite. We happen to use vermiculite here. Then need a soil temperature of around 72 degrees, and within a week your seedling should come up. Lavender is not fast growing. Once they do come up, don't expect them to just go boom. I'll show you an example here. This is a flat of Vera, and we tag all of our flats. It's a 288 cell flat. You see on the end there, this was the seed was sown in this, direct sown, in November of 2019. Today is March 11th of 2020, I should say, put it that way. And these are ready to plant, and I'll show you how we put these in the plug flats in a minute, but I want to go on a little bit about post-emergence. Okay, your seedlings have come up. The first thing a lot of people are tempted to do is just keep them soaking wet. Lavender does not like wet feet. It needs to be damp. You certainly don't want them to wilt and die or dry up, but they do not like to be soggy, and they will very quickly damp off or rot at the soil line. Use of a fungicide such as ban rot, which I don't know if that's available to the average homeowner or not, but something we use here just as a preventative, along with good watering practices. We let these dry down, and of course with these small cells, I'll pop one out here, with a cell that small, they can dry out rapidly. However, they can also become waterlogged when they're small. So it's a delicate balance. And something else you need to watch is the pH of your mix. Lavender likes it to be slightly alkaline, so do not let your pH drop below 7. You don't have to spend a whole lot on a pH test. We've got a pretty high-end one here we use as a pH Pro, but you can go to a lot of the box stores in the garden center and you can find a pH tester where you just stick it in the soil mix or your media mix, and it will tell you what your pH is, or be relatively close. What you don't want is you don't want an acid mix. If it becomes too acid, these will become extremely brittle and it'll be very, very hard to handle. So there's a few tips on starting your lavender. Like I said, these here were 11/14 of 19. These were sown. They were put into a completely unheated greenhouse, and we're in northern Illinois, so it does freeze in there. Not hard. We don't let it go below 30. And it stayed in there until about the second or third week of January before we brought them out. So from, let's say about January 10th until March 10th, so there's 2 months of growth. This is what 2 months of growth looks like under ideal conditions, being in a greenhouse. For fertilization, of course, you do need to give them some feed, being especially such a small cell, but you don't want to overfeed. For the average homeowner, if you get something like a Peters All-Purpose 20-20-20, I know they sell that at Lowe's and Walmart and places like that. Use it at 1/2 strength, and then every time you water, and then about every third or fourth watering, just use plain water. And of course, keep an eye on your pH along the way. That's the best way to have success with this. A lot of people try to sow their lavender seed into garden soil in a pot. That's an almost immediate failure. Don't use garden soil in a small container. It just isn't going to work. Another problem that we see with a lot of the plants we sell and ship is some of the homeowners will have a problem with overwatering. That's one of the main problems with, even if you get a nice big 3.5 inch potted plant that's well established, you put it in the ground, of course water it when you plant it, but don't be out there every day keeping the thing soaked. It will rot, and it'll rot quickly. Another thing you won't want to do is put that, if you're buying plugs, in let's say a 72 count. Let's say you got a weed in it. A 72 count flat like this, and you plant them into a, let's say a 6-inch pot or a planter on your deck, maybe a 12-inch, 24-inch planter. Be careful not to overwater these. Got 2 weeds in there. Careful not to overwater, because they will resent it and you'll have very, very poor growth. What I'm going to do next is just turn the camera down here and show you exactly how we plant these into our plug flats, just for a little bit of a demonstration. This being 2020, we have a huge demand this year. I know we've already pre-sold over 9,000 plugs of 3 different kinds of lavender. We grow Munstead, Pigcoat Superior, and Vera. Those are the only 3 we grow. Those are the most used by commercial growers. There are other varieties. There's other colors. There's Hidcoat Pink, and there's the Elegant series with purple and light purple and pink and white. There's a variety called Mini Blue, which is dwarf. These are all fine for, actually I'd almost call them annuals. They have a problem overwintering anywhere north of zone 6. We can only grow the hardiest ones that are in the highest demand, that are most used by the commercial lavender growers. And these, of course, are Lavandula augustifolia, which is English lavender. Another variety that's common is Lavandula intermedia, which varieties such as Grasso or Provence. Those are grown commercially for the oil content. We are not currently growing those, but we used to. There's also the Spanish lavender, and the Latin name of that one escapes me for the moment. We no longer grow the Spanish lavender because it does not overwinter here in Zone 5. A lot of the lavender we ship in the spring in pots is grown the previous year and then overwintered for what they call vernalization, which is a overwinter cold treatment to give it the best bloom in the spring. The Spanish lavenders don't overwinter well, so therefore we drop those. But I'll get the camera aimed down here and we'll show you a little bit about how this transplanting works. Okay, for this demonstration here I'm going to use a 72 cell flat, one of the popular ones. We also do 128 cell and 50 cell flats of these. I'm going to hand fill this. We usually have these pre-filled, but just for the demonstration here. And this particular mixture is made by Sungrow, sometimes called Metro Mix, sometimes under Fafford. It's a mixture called 1P. Happens to be the model of the mix. And it is just slightly damp. It's not soaking wet. What we do next is we have a board called a dibble board. And we have one of these. We have a lot of these for different size plantings, depending on what we're doing and what the size is. If it happens to be a small bare root thing, the hole size is nowhere near this big. We use something much smaller. We also have some that are larger. You can also make your own. This is a piece of high density polyethylene rod. It's very stiff. Just sharpen the point on the end of it, and you could take that and do like that, for example. And you can make these in different sizes. If you've got doing large plugs, you can make large ones such as that. And you can even use something as simple as a stick. Anyway, this is set over the flat. It leaves a uniform set of holes. And we just take our flat of seedlings and they just get plugged right into those holes. If we do happen to run across a cell that has more than 2 seedlings that came up, we will separate it. Otherwise, they're just planted as they are. Most of them only have 1. It's not uncommon to find 2 because we did plant 3 seeds per cell when we first sowed them, or 2 to 3 seeds per cell. And we were fortunate this year we didn't have any skips. We had some good germination. Some years the quality of seed you get can be questionable. It's also good to get your seed from a good source. Our sources for our lavender seed have always been good. We're careful not to buy just something on eBay that somebody harvested out of their backyard, as odds are they won't have very good germination. Here's a little bit of a close-up of the how well these are rooted in here. But that kind of gives you an idea on how we do this. Yeah. Okay, so we got this flat planted, 72 cell flat. This happens to be a flat of Hidcoat Superior. Okay, your next question you're probably thinking is, okay, how long do they need to stay in that before I can plant them out in my garden? Well, we're planting today on March 11th, will ship probably about the week of April 20th, April 27th, somewhere around there. It needs anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It'll make a very well established plug by then. It'll be ready to go out into the garden or into larger containers. For example, our 3.5 inch pot plants that we sell, we use our 128 count plug flats to transplant into those 3.5 inch pots. We don't go from these 288 cell straight to those bigger pots. We do one step in between, mostly because there's a chance that we could get too much rain and the mix would become too soggy. So that's our main purpose in doing that extra shift. Some of the big commercial places I know don't do that, but we're not one of that multi-million-dollar places and don't have to worry about that type of thing. So at any rate, I'm Roger for Moonshine Designs Nursery. I hope you got something out of this, and it'll help you if you are trying to grow lavender from seed. Maybe you got some good tips on this. Otherwise, please check out our website at moonshinedesignsnursery.com, and we thank you for watching.